My parents sold their home, gave all the money to my brother for a luxury apartment, and then announced they were moving into my house. When I said no, they tried to storm in, and I called the police. This happened about 3 months ago, but I'm still getting blowback from my family about it. I figured I'd share the whole mess here because honestly, I need to vent and get some outside perspective on whether I'm being unreasonable or if my family is just completely insane. I've 38 male been married to my wife Kayla for 6 years. She's an architect, super smart, and makes good money. I run a custom furniture business that I built from absolutely nothing. I own 2 houses. The one we live in is nice. Nothing crazy expensive, but comfortable. The second house I bought as an investment property about 3 years ago. It's a smaller place, and I rented it out to this young couple, Max and Jenny. They pay on time, never cause problems, perfect tenants, basically. Now here's where my family comes in. My parents had 2 kids, me and my younger brother Elias, 35 male. And I swear to God, this guy has never worked a real job in his entire adult life. I'm not exaggerating. Since graduating college, which my parents paid for, obviously he's been bouncing between these ridiculous business ventures that always end up costing my parents money. Meanwhile, did I get family money when I wanted to start my business? Hell no. My dad actually told me it was too risky, and I should focus on getting a stable job with benefits. But when Elias announced he was an entrepreneur, suddenly, it was all about supporting his vision and believing in his potential. Fast forward to now. Elias is engaged to this woman Daphne, who is, let's just say she has expensive taste and zero understanding of where money comes from. This girl is always wearing new clothes, always traveling somewhere, always talking about their luxury lifestyle. On what income, you ask? Great question. As far as I can tell, Elias is currently between ventures again, which means he's living off my parents' generosity while he explores new opportunities. Daphne doesn't work either because she's focusing on wedding planning and building her brand. Her brand being posting selfies and makeup tutorials to her 847 Instagram followers. Here's where things went downhill. 3 months ago, my parents called me up all excited. They decided to sell the family house. This is the house they've owned for 30 years. Bought when my dad first got his job at the power company. Nice place, good neighborhood, probably worth around $450,000 in today's market. I figured they were finally ready to downsize, maybe move to one of those 55-plus communities, get something easier to maintain now that they're in their late 60s. Made sense to me. So I'm on the phone with my mom and she's going on about how they got such a good price and how excited they are about this new chapter in their lives. I'm happy for them, they worked hard their whole lives. They deserve to enjoy retirement. Then she drops it on me. We gave all the money to Elias for his wedding gift. I'm sitting there thinking I must have misheard her. You gave him what now? All of it. $450,000. He found this beautiful penthouse downtown, and we wanted to help him start his new life with Daphne. I'm doing math in my head. If the penthouse cost more than $450,000, and they gave him everything from the house sale, where exactly did my parents plan to live? Turns out, Elias found this $1.2 million penthouse in the trendy part of downtown. One of those glass tower places with a concierge and everything. My parents gave him their entire life savings as a down payment, and he was going to finance the rest. On what income? Still a great question that nobody seemed to be asking. What about your retirement? I asked my mom. Oh, we have it all figured out, she said cheerfully. We're moving into your rental house. Just like that. Not would you consider, or could we talk about, or even do you think that might be possible? Just a straight-up announcement that they were taking over my investment property. I asked if they'd discussed this with my tenants. Apparently, that wasn't necessary because I could just tell Max and Jenny to leave. Break a legal lease and screw over 2 people who've never done anything wrong because my parents needed somewhere to live after giving away their house money. The entitlement was breathtaking. They'd made this massive financial decision without consulting anyone, given away their security to fund my brother's luxury lifestyle, and then just assumed I'd solve their housing problem by destroying my rental income. When I told them that wasn't happening, my dad's voice got real cold, real fast. We raised you, Joshua. This is what family does for each other, right? Family. The same family that paid for Elias's college but not mine. The same family that funded his failed businesses while telling me to be more realistic about my goals. The same family that just handed him $500,000 while expecting me to provide free housing. I told them I'd call them back and hung up the phone. Kayla was standing in the kitchen doorway. She'd heard enough of the conversation to know what was happening. Please tell me you're not actually considering this, she said. Not for a second, but I knew this was just the beginning. My parents don't take no for an answer, especially when they think they're entitled to something and they clearly thought they were entitled to my rental property. I had no idea how ugly this was about to get. I'm at the workshop last Tuesday when my phone starts blowing up. Max was calling. I almost don't answer because I'm trying to concentrate, but something made me pick up. Joshua, we need help. There are people at our front door claiming they own this house. My stomach drops immediately. What do you mean claiming they own it? They have suitcases and they're banging on the door telling us we need to pack up and leave. The woman is screaming that this is their house now and we're trespassing. I already knew who it was, but I asked anyway. Did they give you names? They said they're your parents. Of course they did. I told Max not to open the door under any circumstances and that I was on my way. Dropped everything. Didn't even turn off the Sanders. Just grabbed my keys and rushed out across town. The drive over there was surreal. I kept thinking maybe there was some misunderstanding. Maybe they were just confused about something. But deep down, I knew exactly what was happening. My parents had decided that since I wouldn't voluntarily hand over my rental property, they'd just take it. I pull up to the house, and sure enough, there's my mom and dad on the front porch with 2 big suitcases and a bunch of shopping bags. My mom is pounding on the door with her fist, while my dad stands there looking all authoritative, like he's the landlord showing up to collect rent. This is ridiculous, my mom is yelling. We know you're in there. Open this door right now. I can see Max and Jenny's curtains twitching. They're probably scared out of their minds, but they're smart enough not to answer. My parents see me coming, and my mom immediately switches from angry to relieved. Joshua, thank goodness you're here. These people won't leave. Mom, what are you doing? We're moving in. We told you we needed somewhere to live. And I told you that wasn't happening. My dad steps forward with that stern expression he used to give me when I was a kid. Son, we've been staying at the Extended Stay America for 2 weeks, waiting for you to handle this situation. 2 weeks in a hotel, instead of, I don't know, looking for an apartment or calling a realtor or doing literally anything responsible adults do when they need housing. You've been staying at a hotel because you chose to sell your house and give the money away. I said that's not my problem to solve. We're your parents and they're my tenants with a legal lease. That's when my mom completely lost it. Started screaming about how ungrateful I was, how they sacrificed everything for their children, how a good son would take care of his parents. The whole neighborhood could hear her. My dad tried a different approach. Look, we already gave our notice at the hotel. Our checkout is today. We have nowhere else to go. Notice how that was supposed to be my emergency. They'd painted themselves into a corner and expected me to solve it by screwing over 2 innocent people. Max cracked the door open just enough to stick his head out. Is everything okay? Should we call someone? Everything's fine, I told him. My parents are leaving. We are not leaving, my mom shrieked. This is family property. That's when I lost my patience. This is my property. I bought it with my money from my business that I built with zero help from either of you. My dad started in with the guilt trip after everything we did for you. What exactly did you do for me, Dad? Because I'm having trouble remembering all this help you're talking about. He got flustered, started stammering about raising me and providing for me. I cut him off. You provided the legal minimum required to not get arrested for child neglect. Meanwhile, you're currently funding Elias's penthouse lifestyle while demanding I give you free housing. My mom was crying now, doing that thing where she makes herself the victim. Where are we supposed to go? Literally anywhere that isn't my rental property. The whole thing was insane. They'd created this problem themselves, ignored every reasonable solution, and were now trying to force me to fix it by destroying my business relationship with good tenants. Max spoke up again. Should I call the police? My parents both whipped around to stare at him like he'd suggested calling in an airstrike. You wouldn't dare involve the police in a family matter, my dad said. He absolutely would, I replied. And so would I. You're trespassing. That's when it got really ugly. My mom started screaming about how I was choosing strangers over family, how she was ashamed to have raised such a selfish son, how my dead grandmother would be rolling in her grave. My dad went for the throat. Your brother would never treat us like this. You're right. My brother would take your money and let you live in your car. At least I'm being honest about saying no. I turned to Max. If they're not off this property in 5 minutes, call 911. This isn't over, my dad said, as he grabbed one of the suitcases. They loaded their stuff back into their car. My mom crying the whole time about what a horrible son I was. The last thing I heard before they drove off was my dad yelling that I'd regret this. After they left, I apologized to Max and Jenny for the drama. Turns out they'd been hiding in their bedroom for 20 minutes before I showed up. Genuinely scared these crazy people were going to break down the door. I gave them my direct cell number and told them to call me immediately if my parents showed up again. I also told them I'd understand if they wanted to break their lease early after this harassment. But I knew my parents weren't done. People who think they are entitled to your property don't just give up because you said no once. They escalate. I just didn't realize how far they were willing to go. The next day, my phone started ringing, and I mean constantly, like every hour, on the hour, different numbers, different relatives, all with the same basic message. I'm a terrible son who's abandoning his parents. First call was from my Aunt Susan at 7 a.m. I'm barely awake. Coffee hasn't even finished brewing, and she's laying into me about family values and respect for elders. Apparently, my parents had called her crying about how their ungrateful son left them homeless. Joshua, how could you do this to them? They're your parents. I tried explaining the situation, but she cut me off. I don't want to hear excuses. Figure out a way to help them. Then she hung up on me. An hour later, my cousin Noah called. Haven't talked to this guy in probably 3 years. But suddenly, he's very concerned about my character. Same script. How could I abandon family? What kind of person chooses money over parents, blah blah blah? They raised you, man. You owe them. They raised my brother too. And he's the one with their money. I said that's different. How is it different, click? Another hang-up. This pattern continued all day. By noon, I'd gotten 8 phone calls and probably 15 text messages. The texts were the worst part. Long guilt trips about family loyalty, how my parents sacrificed everything for their kids, how I'm breaking their hearts. My phone kept buzzing every few minutes with another message from another relative who'd apparently been recruited for this campaign. Here's what really got me. Not one of these people asked for my side of the story. Not one of them said, hey, what's actually happening here? They all just accepted my parents' version of events and decided I was the villain. My cousin Phoebe sent me this long Facebook message about how my parents were living like refugees in a hotel, and how could I sleep at night knowing they were suffering living like refugees because they chose to sell their house and give the money away. I'm reading this stuff thinking, where were all these traditional values when my parents were funding Elias's lifestyle for the past 15 years? Where was the family concern when I was working 3 jobs to pay for college? But here's the thing that really pissed me off. Not one of these righteous family members offered to help my parents themselves. They all had very strong opinions about what I should do, but somehow none of them had spare bedrooms or guest houses. When I pointed this out to my Aunt Susan during her second call of the day, she got all flustered. Well, we don't have the space you have. I don't have space either. That's why I rent it to people. You have more money. There it was, the real reason. Because I busted my back and built a successful business, I was obligated to solve everyone else's problems. Because I'd been responsible with my finances, I should subsidize everyone else's bad decisions. By Wednesday, I'd had enough. I sat down that night and wrote the most comprehensive email of my life. Took me about 2 hours to get it exactly right. I wanted to be clear, factual, and impossible to misinterpret. Subject line setting the record straight, the full story. I started with the timeline. Parents sell house for $450,000. Parents give all money to Elias for penthouse down payment. Parents announce they're moving into my rental property without asking. I say no and offer to help them find appropriate housing. They refuse and demand I evict my legal tenants. Then I attached documentation, screenshots of text messages, photos of the lease agreement, even pulled up property records showing when I bought the house and how much I paid. I wanted everyone to see exactly what they were asking me to do. The email was probably 2,000 words long. I went through everything point by point, but the best part was the end. I listed every person who had called or texted me about family duty and obligation. Then I wrote, since everyone is so concerned about my parents' housing situation, I'm sure one of you will be happy to provide them with a place to stay. After all, family helps. Family, right? Please let me know your move-in date for mom and dad so I can give them your address. Hit send at 11 p.m. on Wednesday night to 30 people. My phone was silent Thursday morning. First time in 3 days, I wasn't woken up by angry relatives. Around noon, I started getting responses. They fell into 3 categories. People who suddenly remembered they didn't really have space after all. People who went radio silent completely. People who doubled down and got even nastier. Uncle Bob was in category 3. Sent me this long reply about how I was destroying the family and turning my back on the people who made me who I am. Really dramatic stuff about dishonoring my ancestors and breaking the bonds of blood. I replied with one sentence. What's your move-in date? He never responded. The family Facebook group went completely silent. All those posts about duty and respect just disappeared. Funny how that works. By Friday, the phone calls had stopped. They must have figured out I wasn't backing down. Either way, the harassment campaign ended as quickly as it started. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more call to make. Called Elias directly Friday afternoon. He picked up on the first ring like he'd been waiting for it. "Josh, what the hell did you send to everyone?" "The truth? You got a problem with that. You're making the whole family look bad." We went back and forth for about 10 minutes. He tried every angle, how mom and dad needed help, how I was being selfish, how family should stick together. All the same thing I'd been hearing all week. Finally, I cut to the point. "You've got their money, Elias. You figure out their housing." I hung up and waited to see what would happen next. Didn't have to wait long. The first sign something was wrong came from my cousin Maria. She's basically the only family member who stayed neutral during the whole mess, probably because she's got her own thing to deal with and doesn't have time for drama. She texted me one random Tuesday afternoon. "Hey, did you know Elias is having problems with his penthouse purchase?" I hadn't heard anything, but it didn't surprise me. Financing a $1.2 million place when you've never had a steady job tends to be complicated. What kind of problems? I texted back. "Bank is asking for employment verification and income statements." Apparently that's harder to provide than he thought. No crap, Sherlock. Turns out banks actually want to see proof you can pay back massive loans. Revolutionary concept. Maria didn't have all the details, but over the next few weeks the story started coming together through the family grapevine. The bank had initially pre-approved Elias based on my parents' down payment and some projections about his consulting business. But when it came time for final approval, they wanted actual documentation, pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, all that boring paperwork that proves you're not just some deadbeat looking to live beyond your means. Problem is, Elias didn't have any of that stuff because he doesn't actually make any money. His consulting business was basically him calling himself an entrepreneur and occasionally meeting people for coffee to discuss opportunities. No clients, no contracts, no revenue, just a website he'd paid someone to build and some business cards. The bank laughed him out of the office. Without the loan, he couldn't buy the penthouse. Without buying the penthouse, he couldn't get his deposit back. And that deposit, it was a big chunk of my parents' house money. But wait, it gets better. See, Elias and Daphne had been planning this massive wedding. We're talking 200+ guests, fancy venue, open bar, the whole production. Because when you're living off your parents' retirement fund, why not go all out, right? The wedding venue wanted final payment 2 weeks before the ceremony. Elias called my parents asking them to cover it since they'd already invested so much in his future. My parents had to explain that they'd given him literally everything and were currently living in a one-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. So Elias started reaching out to family members for loans. I put that in quotes because we all knew he wasn't planning to pay anyone back. "Hey, I'm just short on the wedding venue payment. Could you help me out? It's just temporary until my business picks up." I got a text from him too. "Josh, I know we've had our differences, but I could really use your help with the venue payment. It's only $15,000. Only $15,000? Like that's pocket change." I didn't even reply. Apparently nobody else did either because the venue ended up canceling their booking 3 days before the wedding. Just straight up told them the room wasn't available anymore because payment hadn't been received. They ended up having the ceremony in Daphne's backyard. Half the guests didn't show up because of the last-minute venue change. The other half spent the whole time whispering about what a disaster it was. According to Maria, Daphne cried through most of the reception about how this wasn't how she'd imagined her special day. Meanwhile, the same week as their backyard wedding disaster, I closed on my third property. I'd been looking at this place for months, a small commercial building that needed some work but had great potential. The previous owner was motivated to sell, and I got it for about $40,000 under market value. My plan is to renovate it and either flip it or rent it out for commercial space. I posted a casual photo on Instagram of the keys and paperwork. Another project in the works. Sometimes patience pays off. Nothing dramatic, just a normal business update. A few family members liked the post. I noticed my parents didn't. But the story wasn't over yet. My parents were about to make one last desperate play. Last Saturday morning, I'm having coffee with Kayla in our kitchen talking about baby names and looking at paint samples for the nursery walls. Nice, peaceful morning. Exactly the kind of quiet family time I'd been looking forward to. Then our Ring doorbell starts going off. I look at my phone and see my parents standing on our front porch. Both of them dressed up nice. My mom holding a bouquet of flowers and what looks like a grocery bag. My dad's got this weird forced smile like he's trying to sell me something. They're talking directly to the camera like it's a video call. "Joshua, we know you're home," my mom says in this overly sweet voice. "We can see your car in the driveway." I look at Kayla. She's already shaking her head. We brought groceries to cook for you, my dad chimes in, holding up the bag. Your mother wants to make that pot roast you used to love. The manipulation was incredible. They'd shown up uninvited to my house with props designed to make me feel guilty. Flowers and food like this was some normal family visit instead of another attempt to bulldoze my boundaries. We've been thinking about everything that happened, my mom continues to the camera. We made mistakes. We should have asked your permission about the rental house. Too little, too late. About 8 months too late. I'm watching this whole performance on my phone while sitting 20 feet away from them. The audacity was breathtaking. After months of harassment, manipulation, and trying to destroy my business relationships, they thought they could just show up with flowers and reset everything. Kayla's looking at me like, please tell me you're not falling for this. I'm not answering the door, I told her. But my parents weren't giving up that easy. They stood there for about 10 minutes, taking turns talking to the camera, explaining how sorry they were and how much they missed me. My mom even started crying at one point, doing that whole victim routine she's perfected over the years. When it became obvious I wasn't coming to the door, my dad's tone changed. Joshua, this is ridiculous. We're your parents. Open the door so we can talk like adults. That's when I made my decision. I called the police non-emergency line. I need to report trespassing. I have individuals on my property who refuse to leave, and I have a previous incident report involving the same people. The dispatcher was super professional about it. Asked if I felt threatened if they were trying to break in standard questions. I explained that they were my parents, but that I'd specifically asked them not to come to my house, and they'd already harassed my tenants at another property. We'll send an officer out. The response time was actually pretty quick. About 15 minutes later, a patrol car pulls up. I watched through the window as this young cop gets out and walks up to my parents. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see my dad getting animated, pointing at the house, probably explaining how this was just a family misunderstanding. My mom was still holding those damn flowers like they were evidence of her good intentions. The cop listened patiently, then walked over to the Ring doorbell and pressed the button. Sir, this is Officer Martinez with the police department. Could you come to the door, please? I went outside and explained the situation. Previous harassment of my tenants, repeated demands for my property, months of family pressure and manipulation. I showed him the incident report number from the rental house thing. Officer Martinez was completely reasonable about it. Do you want them to leave your property? Yes. Have you asked them to leave and not return multiple times? He walked back over to my parents and had another conversation. This time, I could hear my dad getting louder. This is our son's house. We have a right to visit our own child. Sir, your son has asked you to leave his property. You need to respect that. This is ridiculous. We're family. I understand this is a family situation, but property rights still apply. You need to leave now. My mom started crying again, but the cop wasn't having it. He was polite, but firm. They needed to pack up their flowers and groceries and get off my property. And then they left. Officer Martinez came back to talk to me. He suggested I document everything and consider filing for a restraining order if they continue to show up uninvited. Sometimes people need official paperwork to understand that no means no. Monday morning, I called my lawyer, explained the whole timeline. You've got grounds for a restraining order, he said, especially with the previous incident involving your tenants. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. I attached everything I'd been documenting over the past 8 months. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. I half expected my parents to fight it, but they didn't even show up. Judge granted the restraining order without any drama. 200 yards. They can't come within 200 yards of my house, my business, or my rental property. Violation means automatic arrest. I also changed my phone number that week. Only gave the new number to people I actually trust. The peace and quiet has been incredible. No more manipulation calls, no more guilt trips, no more surprise visits. Just me, my pregnant wife, and our normal life. 3 weeks. That's how long the calm lasted before the next fire started. I'm at the workshop when my phone rings. Unknown number, but it's local, so I pick up thinking it might be a potential client. Hi, is this Joshua? I'm calling about the investment opportunity your brother pitched me last month. I stop sanding immediately. I'm sorry, what investment opportunity? The rental property portfolio. Elias said you guys were partners in a real estate business and you were looking for private investors. My blood goes cold. Can you hold on just a second? I step outside the workshop and find somewhere quiet. Sir, I need you to tell me exactly what my brother told you. Turns out this guy David had met Elias at some networking event downtown. Elias introduced himself as co-owner of a successful property management company and started showing David photos on his phone of their portfolio. The photos were of my houses, my rental property, my personal residence, even the commercial building I just bought. Elias had been walking around town claiming he owned half my business. He said you guys had 3 properties currently generating income and were looking to expand. Asked if I'd be interested in investing $25,000 for a stake in the next acquisition. $25,000. This wasn't some small-time screw-up. This was serious fraud. Did you give him any money, I asked? I gave him $5,000 as a good faith deposit while I thought about the full investment. He said it would hold my spot in the deal. I felt sick. David, I need to tell you something. I don't have a business partner. I own those properties myself, and my brother has never invested a dime in anything I do. Long silence on the other end. Are you saying he scammed me? That's exactly what I'm saying, and you're probably not the only one. I got David's contact information and told him I'd call him back. Then I did something I probably should have done months ago. I Googled my brother's name along with my business name. The results made me want to punch a wall. There were business networking profiles where Elias listed himself as co-founder of my company. A LinkedIn page claiming he was partner and investment coordinator for my real estate business. Even a Facebook business page he'd created using my company name with himself listed as the primary contact. This piece of junk had been impersonating me for months. I started making calls first to my lawyer, then to David, to get more details about exactly what Elias had told him and what documentation he might have. David sent me screenshots of text conversations. He'd even sent David a fake contract with letterhead that looked suspiciously similar to my actual business documents. But the worst part, he'd been using my reputation to legitimize his scams, telling people they could verify the success of the business by driving by the properties or looking up the ownership records because the properties were real. They were just mine, not his. My lawyer's advice was simple. Document everything and call the police. This is identity theft and fraud, not family drama. That night, I sat down with Kayla and showed her everything I'd found. This is beyond family matter now, I told her. He's literally stealing my identity to con people out of money. Friday morning, I called the police and filed a fraud report. Brought all the documentation, David's screenshots, the fake business profiles, everything. The detective assigned to the case was actually pretty interested once he saw the scope of what Elias had been doing. We see a lot of family financial disputes, Detective Rodriguez told me, but this goes way beyond that. Your brother's been running an active con using your identity and assets. They opened an investigation immediately. But I wasn't done yet. I had a better idea. I called David back and proposed something. What if we set up a meeting with Elias? Let him think you're ready to make the full investment, and I'll show up as a surprise. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown. David texted Elias saying he was ready to move forward with the $25,000 investment and wanted to finalize the paperwork. Elias agreed immediately, probably because he was desperate for money. I showed up early and sat at a corner table where I could see everything but wouldn't be immediately visible to Elias when he walked in. Elias arrived right on time carrying a folder that probably contained more fake documents. David played it perfectly. So tell me more about how the partnership works with your brother. Oh, Joshua handles the day-to-day property management, but I'm the one who handles investor relations and new acquisitions, Elias said smoothly. We've got a great system worked out, and he's okay with bringing in outside investors. Are you kidding? It was his idea. He's always saying we need more capital to expand faster. I almost laughed out loud. This guy was doubling down on the lies even when he was about to get caught. Actually, David said I'd love to meet Joshua and hear his perspective directly. Elias got a little nervous. He's pretty busy with the properties, but maybe we can arrange something down the road. How about right now? That's when I stood up and walked over to their table. The look on Elias's face was priceless. Pure panic, like he'd just seen a ghost. His mouth actually fell open. Hey partner, I said, sitting down next to David. David here was just telling me about this investment opportunity you've been discussing. Elias started stammering. Josh, I can explain, please do. I'm really curious to hear about our business partnership that I somehow forgot about. David was recording the whole thing on his phone. We'd agreed beforehand that he'd document everything for the police report. I thought maybe we could. Elias couldn't even form complete sentences. You thought you could steal my identity and defraud people using my properties as collateral, I said calmly. Is that what you thought? The coffee shop was pretty quiet, but our conversation was starting to draw attention from other customers. Elias looked around nervously, probably realizing how screwed he was. David the First continued, just so we're clear. I have never had a business partner. I built my company entirely by myself with zero help from my family. My brother here has never invested in real estate and doesn't own any portion of my business. David nodded. So when he took my $5,000, he committed fraud. Elias finally found his voice. Look, I was going to pay him back. I just needed some time to get things sorted out. Here's what's going to happen, I told him. You're going to give David his money back immediately. You're going to take down all those fake business profiles, and you're going to pray that the police go easy on you when I file charges Monday morning. You wouldn't call the cops on your own brother. Wrong thing to say. Watch me, I replied, pulling out my phone. Actually, let's call them right now. Elias panicked, started begging me not to involve the police, promising he'd make everything right, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, the same excuses he'd been using his whole life. But I was done enabling him. I called 911 right there in the coffee shop. I need to report a fraud in progress. The suspect is here with me now. 20 minutes later, 2 patrol officers showed up. I explained the situation and showed them the evidence. They arrested Elias on the spot for fraud and identity theft. The last thing he said as they put him in the patrol car was, "Mom and Dad are going to hear about this." Good, I told him. Maybe they'll finally understand what kind of person they've been enabling all these years. David got his $5,000 back eventually. Turned out Elias still had most of it in his checking account, but the criminal charges stuck. My brother ended up pleading guilty to avoid jail time, but he got 2 years probation and had to pay restitution to his other victims. Because David wasn't the only one. The investigation uncovered at least 6 other people Elias had scammed for smaller amounts. Total damage was almost $40,000. When my parents found out about the arrest, they went nuclear, not at Elias for being a criminal, at me for destroying the family. 6 months later, Elias and Daphne got divorced. She moved back to her home state and took his last name off her social media. Last I heard, he was working at a call center and living in a studio apartment across town. The crazy thing is how much better my life got once I cut off all the toxic family drama. My business is thriving. Kayla's pregnancy is going smoothly. Sometimes you have to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your sanity. I chose sanity, and I've never been happier.